get close. Wait for that 6:30 mark.
Easily visible
Yes.
here.
Don't want to starting early. So, right. All right. Now we can go. Yeah, I like this. Yeah. Although I just didn't like the fact that on the camera we looked a lot bigger. I like seeing back for the council chambers. Okay. Begin our planning commission meeting for October 25th, 2023. I have 5 commissioners present, and I know Commissioner Rowley asked to be excused. And I'm going to give her invitation because I didn't ask anybody else. Father in heaven, we are grateful for this day. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to meet together and to discuss the matters for our city. And we pray that that will allow our minds to be open, that we'll be able to look at all the different issues before us and to be able to make the decisions which will benefit our community now and into the future. And we are grateful for the opportunity we have to live in this country where we are able to participate and make a difference. And we pray for a blessing upon our servicemen and women and our first line responders, that they'll be watched or protected, and grateful for the service which they provide. And these things we pray in the name of our Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Oh, right. 6 commissioners present. All right. Item 3 is our consent agenda. Was there any discussion about the agenda from the previous meeting? No. If not, I'll take a motion for approval.
And then just a reminder, if you, since we're relying heavily on the recording tonight, if you can just state your name with the motion in a second.
Okay. I move that we approve the minutes for meeting of October 11th. This is Marzan.
Okay, I have a motion. I have a second. That's second. Same Commissioner. Commissioner Hamuli, all in favor by yes?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to the public forum. We have 1 online and 1 in the room. Any of the public like to address us for something not on tonight's agenda? None in the room. Oh. BD, we're not sure who you are, but if you want to raise your hand if you have a comment, otherwise we'll move on. Okay, we will move on to the work session for tonight. We just announce both of them where it's just a work session, or do you want to announce them?
We'll go ahead and just announce.
Okay, so we're gonna have a work session over the portable shipping container draft ordinance, as well as the Payson City General Plan. Looks like Michael's going to be.
Yeah, Michael's going to go first,
sharing with us on that one. So, okay.
Those who came in a little bit later, no problem. We're planning no more than an hour tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It
can be less. It can be less, but no more than an hour.
You didn't want to talk about shipping containers for an hour.
I wanted to see Kathy's draft though.
He's got
it.
See this.
Commissioner Hamuli, do you want to talk about what you've got first, or you want to look at this? What does everyone want to do?
Let's go with you guys, and then we'll see where we cross over. How about that? Yeah.
Okay. So the stuff on here that's in black is existing code. And then the blue is some suggested language that staff have drafted up. So this very first section is the definition of a portable shipping container. I don't know if we want to read all of this or you want to read it individually.
How long is it?
It's about 2 pages total.
I'm good to read it individually if you just want to scroll through it. Is anybody else opposed to that? Just reading over it. Okay.
Hey, if you hit F11, it will maximize your.
He's just in.
Yeah, but you saw a browser.
I don't have an F11 on the keyboard. Oh, there it is. It's very small.
Yeah.
Airplane mode.
Oh, she might have to hit that function. Yeah, if not, we'll make it work. Okay.
Okay, so that would make it. Well, that helps too. Thanks.
Part of it is it's in the review mode, and so it's showing the side borders in case any comments are made. But everyone can read that.
That's fine. Yeah.
Just scroll down. Please do. What happened there?
Stop sharing. Scroll really far.
I think you were left at the meeting.
You and then-
I don't know.
You left the meeting.
Control my computer. All right.
You have 11 keys off of the airplane mode button.
I was trying to help.
They're all in the technologically savvy anymore, I think. So,
Back on the Wi-Fi.
Pause.
Pause for break. I make Alex back.
All right.
I will just do something like that. Hey, everybody's read that section?
To see, does that limit them to not stack in the residential?
No, but further down it'll say that.
Oh, okay. Let's.
Oh, I'm still reading.
one more second.
Okay.
Okay.
Everyone's read this blue section, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Good, everyone? That's the end there.
So if that's okay, if I can make a comment, I looked at, I typed and Googled the, city ordinances in Utah for, storage containers. And, South Salt, a pretty large, set starting it. And so D, E, and G in yours seems to satisfy a lot of what South Salt Lake has. That I kind of noticed that were more than what we had. Provo, by contrast, has like basically a footnote. And so kudos to you for drafting this one, which is longer and identifies a lot of the same things that South Salt Lake already kind of addresses that Provo didn't. And that is a little more specific to what would help us to enforce using these storage containers if residents choose to, or commercial businesses choose to use certain days. Only one that I didn't notice was, and maybe it's in there, but I'm just, as far as in Provost talked a little bit more about where the portable storage container could be located.
So we treat it like an accessory building, and so it has to be beyond the front yard setback.
Okay.
So just this highlighted yellow here,
So this is currently in the code. I just highlighted it because I was wondering if we want to strengthen that, remove it, do anything with it at all.
I would say suggest a time limit 30 for 45 days or less, or 30 days or less. So containers used in association with licensed fireworks business, donation center, or other products for 45 days or less are exempt from these regulations. But if we just leave it as exempt from these regulations, the fireworks stand, it's good year round, right?
Right.
And so I think we need to have some sort of limitation to how, what they're, for how long they're exempt for that use.
Yeah, and in the one from South Salt Lake, it says it's just used associated with a licensed fireworks stand, but such use is limited to the times during which the stand may lawfully occupy a space. As far as when it can be sold.
Right.
During the time.
Since we're wrapping in donation centers and other stuff, I mean, then all of a sudden, do we have donation centers being like, I'm just gonna drop a storage container there and it can stay forever because we don't have a time limit on it, or
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. South Salt Lake is stipulated as far as during the.
Otherwise, I think then we push it to these commercial ones and say, well, that is permanently approved because now you're on a commercial site, so you're good there. So I just think this one needs to have some sort of time limit.
I was thinking about that with the donation centers, you know, places like the and stuff probably might have these year round.
Yeah.
But if that's the case.
Then we just move it under commercial and say, hey, now you're approved permanently because you've done it there, but most of these I would assume be on a temporary basis
Right.
anyway. It's, hey, for this month, we're doing a food drive, or we're doing a,
The DI used to just drop them in the
Right.
church parking lots for a week or
Yeah.
something. You don't even see them doing that.
No.
Not much anymore.
Because everybody just uses it as a dumpster.
yes, they take Tabitha's Way stuff is just
There you go.
overflowing. Doesn't matter how big you put clothes only on there.
They just.
So bad every time.
So, and I feel bad for them because it costs them a lot to dispose of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one time they put a big receptacle out here on this end of the city parking lot to collect yard waste for lawn clippings and everything.
They got rid of all the green waste
Put this
because
thing up there, I thought it was awesome, go over and dump my lawn clippings there. Every time you come over, bags of garbage. And
Yeah.
The city just, it's just.
because yeah, we had the green waste at our house too, and they took it all out because people were, or they'd overflow it and the dump would be full, so they just start chucking it everywhere.
Yeah.
And that makes it so the guy coming to pick it up can't just pick up the dumpster, he's gotta get out, physically move all the bags so he can even get the dumpster out, and then. So anyway, other than that, I think we're definitely heading in the right direction. There's a lot of good things in there that I think give us a lot more leverage. Cool, I get a little concerned sometimes on the, how far we make them, treat them, you know.
The only other thing, well, of course, it's still covered under the accessory building, so. Square footage is limited to lot size, zone size, so that was one of the notes I put in here, because they make those things anywhere from 8 feet by 10 to 8 feet by 56. So they make them up to 56 feet in length.
Wow.
So that's a long. They even make those in high cubes, and so they're not 8 feet tall, they're 10 feet tall, so.
That was gonna be my question. I saw that there was a note of no stacking under non-residential, but is that no?
So that's in.
It's at the very bottom too, it said in all, it said in all places.
But it isn't residential.
In residential, it doesn't say that.
But at the very, very bottom, it says. It says it in that very vertical stacking is prohibited in all zones except for business license. Where does it?
Right, no black
Right
paragraph.
where his cursor is.
Scroll up a little bit, number 4, just above there, what is that applying to? Not in this section, the section above. Number 4.
That's in non-commercial, or that's in
in
commercial sections, yeah.
Yeah, non-residential zones.
Yeah, South Salt Lake said that you could stack them, but that's only if you're in the business of selling.
And maybe it would be better just to clarify, I know it's in that bottom paragraph, maybe having it called out as an item in the residential, just because.
So I have a little question about that though. It's a non-residential zone. That means that we are in business park and we can't stack containers.
But we're talking even Walmart, like the S1 zone and everything else, because we got the S1
But what about the business?
and any
park?
commercial.
Is it unreasonable for them to stack them in the business?
And
park?
I would say no.
I think that's a good question.
I think in the business park, if they're, I mean, you would want visible from the street, because the business park, the whole idea of the business park is.
Probably still want a limit of some kind on it.
Right.
But I can see that it may make sense in some industrial areas to allow them to stack to some extent.
And we could further clarify,
Well,
we could do industrial zone.
that might be it, is that we do industrial only, because that eliminates the S1, it eliminates commercial, so we don't worry about downtown. So if you say just industrial zones, stacking may be a conditional use. I don't know how you could term that for,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, so like.
unfortunately, conditional uses now are becoming more and more permitted
Conditional-
uses.
A conditional use is a permitted.
Permitted use, but yes. But I mean, yeah, in most industrial zones would have a concrete batch plant. Do you care if they have 2 containers on top of themselves? It's like,
But I will clarify that the business park is not an industrial zone.
right.
But the business park might be okay. Let them stack, because it's not. It's not like a commercial zone, but kind
I
of
think the
sort of.
business parks intended to be more like professional
Yeah.
businesses and,
not
you know,
just
high-tech manufacturing,
Yeah.
things like that.
Where they may move to stack.
Well, the only issue you've got if they're using them for storage like Walmart and. Anyway,
Yeah.
you still got the issue of now all of a sudden you've got doors up 8 feet high and you've got to have some means of accessing, so.
Forklift, they call it. It's real
Yeah. Was most of them find that very practical because where they're.
OSHA certificates, yeah.
Yeah, they only stipulated, and you know, that sounds like only said you could stack them only if they're for the purpose of selling.
Yeah,
It didn't say we could use them for storage.
regulating it as a city because of safety is not our point place, but definitely OSHA would be like,
Well, my opinion would be too on if we're gonna, allow them in, residential type areas. You know, it says skirting, because road and stuff, I'm not so sure they shouldn't be set on at least a concrete pad because
put them on
we
a
put them
slab.
in, yeah.
That's what.
Because otherwise you've got weeds and, you know, we've got all them problems.
On roads, big under, anything beyond that.
So maybe in all zones, it's on a hard surface.
They said, Provo said that it had to be on a slab.
But then it's
Slab or gravel and.
compacted road base, good, or does it have to be
Concrete.
concrete, or does it have to be?
They said.
And this is where I get a little, I'm like, how far do we really regulate it? Does it become, okay, we're getting.
If somebody wants to put them in there strictly as instead of a storage building and they want to put one of these shipping containers in the backyard. You know, because of weight and everything else, you know, because they're heavy. I mean, a 40-footer, I should have pulled that up, but a 40-footer is gonna be over 4 tons.
A lot of weight to them.
You just don't grab a hold of one of them and.
When once you put it there, it's gonna be there.
Right,
Forever.
that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
you're putting them in a crane because they're,
That was something else we talked about last time, like. Not having it delivered and removed during, at least in residential zone during odd hours. Living next to a building that is commercial or industrial, light industrial,
all hours of the night, I think it's,
Yes, you have
yeah,
some good experience with that.
I do. And if Ryan were here, I would chew his ear
good meeting to,
out. I don't know how much it would need to get.
yeah, I was gonna say, he's a real estate agent.
He's just in the family.
Yeah.
Well, the thought on the slab type thing is then it becomes more of an easier effort to, like I said, skirt them, so there's no, because they have holes on them for the forklifts to pick them up from the side. You know, they've got access way, but like I said, if it's just sitting on, like I said, dirt, it's always gonna be an issue. Yeah. And you're gonna get the ground to settle, so then, you know, what happens to them, so. Right.
Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to help, I mean, you'd hope most companies aren't gonna come place them anyway in the middle of life, but it's better to cut it off now.
Yeah.
To Kathy's point, yeah.
So, yeah, so I mean, mine, I guess the treatment thing is good, it's just, yeah, like how much do we regulate the way people have to do it, because again, do we regulate how they paint their sheds or their wherever else, so.
Photo enforcement too, right?
Just
I
think,
would say as a minimum, they need to be painted in a
Similar tone as the house.
yeah, similar tone as the surrounding building.
Some words you're gonna say Barbie pink.
I've seen some purple houses, I don't know if I want. Okay, but I think it's really good, I think you covered just about everything we talked about. Yeah, so I think,
let me just ask you there about, bullet G there, portable storage containers shall not be used for human habitation. Do you have any concerns about using it for animals?
As like an enclosure for an animal or?
Animal like, or just, somebody use it to, raise chickens?
Oh.
it's an expensive chicken coop, but yeah.
Maybe they're really special chickens, right?
I like that point and I would agree with that because. But if you're gonna put pets in there, you need air vents if you can.
We probably have some code on the books about having animals in residential areas.
Or is it the same as accessory structure too?
So, yeah, South Salt Lake says temporary portable storage containers may not be used as a dwelling or living quarters.
Well, any accessory dwelling unit in Payson shouldn't be used as living quarters, a detached one anyway, so it makes sense that we wouldn't allow a detached storage
Yeah.
cube to be used, because we wouldn't allow you to build an accessory dwelling unit and use it as a.
Yeah.
Living space
To
either.
be honest, I mean, accessory buildings now could be used for chickens and whatever's a little animal. So if we want to treat it just like an accessory building, then that would be permissible, but if you have concerns about that, then maybe we should point that out.
I just wanted to throw it out there. I wasn't quite sure how I feel about that exactly, but I just felt like it'll happen. So do we care? You know?
If they're gonna have
I was
animals
actually
anyway,
trying to go through the city code to find a number on, how many chickens can somebody have in their yard.
3 and no roosters.
We got a rooster in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Ryan, that's charming.
Anyway, I mean, I never did find it.
On any of those.
Yeah, in animal control,
Yeah,
in animal control section, it's,
3, something like that.
you can't have. I thought
I think it's 2 cats, 2 dogs, 3 chickens,
yeah,
but it's.
So the chicken man, I've noticed his backyard is not the chicken.
Well, it's just like pigeons, I had a lady come to me and I said, I'll bring that up with the proper people, and she goes, oh. No, I was just wondering if there's something to do, because they don't clean up after them, they don't do nothing, but I don't wanna make my neighbors mad, so I don't say nothing.
But
sounds
you
like-
tried to clean up after a pigeon. We had pigeons growing up, and I'm like,
but I think to your point, it kind of brings up what Brandon was talking about last time of.
Enforcement.
if the neighbor
Becomes an issue.
Yeah.
If there's no one there to actually. Like with that enforcement.
Right. But I would figure if they're entitled to the animals, if they use it to house the animals, then as long as it's set back and everything else.
But like I said, the enforcement thing,
Right.
Wrong, because if somebody complains and you don't have an enforcement officer that can go down and says, you know what, we've got a complaint that you have a grundle of pigeons here and you don't clean up after them, and so we're here to make sure you're within code. So basically our city attorney say, oh, no, we can't do that. Well, we have to have somebody sign a thing right here. I'm like, that's a crock. Well, they're violating city ordinance.
But then, like I said, though, you bring them in against a judge, and if you don't have a credible witness or somebody who's gonna hold up to the judge throws it out because he says, I don't have. So it wastes everybody's time to.
I think that we should have a further discussion on enforcement as one of our work sessions. You know, just to understand that a little bit more and to say, okay, how do we make our code more enforceable?
Right, but it's just like if you get a traffic ticket and you dispute it and that cop doesn't show up to say I gave the ticket, that's how fast they're going, the judge throws it out because the person who told you were violating it isn't there to dispute it. So the judge legally had to throw it out. So I think it becomes the same issue here is we can cite them all we want, but if the person is not gonna show up to court and say, yeah, this is what's happening.
I think there has to be a point though to the. If an officer can visibly see that there is an infraction there, that should count for something.
Yeah. So you're basically saying, oh, I pull somebody over for speeding. The radar of my witness to speeding. But now I can't take them to court because they don't have somebody else.
They can, it's just that the cop has to show up to court
I know.
if they dispute it.
Right.
So then the cop becomes the witness for the crime.
Saying about code violation and stuff is most people, if an officer comes to the door and says, you know, we've had a report that you're in violation of this code because you have this, you know, we're gonna give you 30 days to take care of the problem. If not, we'll check back and it's not taken care of, then we're gonna have to cite. And most people are gonna say, oh,
And 90% of people will
Yeah.
say, oh, okay, let's get this
Yeah,
finished.
did you sit in on any of those sessions, the lady that, I think she only did one, but she was a code enforcement officer for Ogden, I think. And I don't think she was a police officer, they had a division that was code enforcement and she was not, I have to go back and look at the agenda on who it was. Up at the conference,
Where
and
we talked about this short-term rental.
I think so, and yeah, and she, so it's not, it doesn't have to be a law enforcement officer, it just has to be somebody sworn in as a code enforcement officer, so we don't necessarily have to have one of our police officers, but then does the city have resources to get a code enforcement officer?
So I'll just give you my opinion on that one. I came from a city where they had a code enforcement division. And it was not nearly as effective as a police officer showing up and saying, you're in violation of this code. And there is just something about seeing somebody in uniform on your doorstep saying, you're doing something wrong. And I think that comes back to 90% of people think of that and say, oh my goodness, I'm doing something wrong. The police officer knows that I'm doing something wrong. I should probably correct it. Unfortunately, the 10% occupy 97% of the time.
So, yeah, my house is church 10% is probably more like 3.
Well, and then, I mean, I know I mentioned this to our state representative about the fine on being in the HOV lane. And he said, what are you concerned about? I'm like, I want that fine to go up. And he said, how much you talking? I'm like, California. He goes, I can't do California. And I said, you gotta do something more to keep people out of that lane. And it's up to $337, right? Which my daughter wasn't happy that I helped do that. And I said, she got a warning. And I mean, maybe in the midst of the discussion about the code enforcement, we also up some of the fines that are on the books.
The punishment affixed becomes encouragement
Well,
to fix the situation.
It is for speeding, if you go over 100, right? I mean, then for the same idiot to get flagged twice over the same stretch of I-15. I mean, you double that fine and give that guy something to think about, because that's just one way to make sure that once the code enforcement happens, that there is a legit, because that gets my attention as an animal control person when my dogs get out, and then I find out how much the cost is, plus I have a chip and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, that would be part of the discussion is not just recreating what we write, but discussing having how the code enforcement group takes care of it. And then also what is the current fines? Because again, we can make a lot of money just straight down the end of 8 South there in the school zone. We could pay for everybody's Christmas party in this room, just watching the people that go blasting in there until you realize that there's a cop sitting there with his buzz gun just going, now I'm gonna ding you.
Part of the issue though is if you're coming down the hill, the trees do block the light.
Yeah, but then for those of us that have lived here for a long time, we
Yes.
know it's a 20.
We know, but
Just like, and I don't know why my wife thinks that when I go 25 by the high school that I'm an old man all of a sudden, but I know that it's 25. So that would be part of the future discussion is the code enforcement, what the law says for us here in Payson, and then what is the fines that are available to said officer to say, this is your second warning, and now I'm gonna have to give you a ticket for this amount.
Well, see, that was my point at the last meeting. We can put all the code in place that
Yes.
we want, but if there's no enforcement,
Right,
why?
'Cause that's how you
go
get-
the effort?
yeah, the pet owners to be able to keep their dogs in their yard or whatever, right? Is you find them, or you find them for putting their car on the road post, November 1st. And then you say, we're going to enforce this, and then you enforce it, yeah, because.
I think this brings up a really good discussion because the code, we talk about toolboxes and tool belts and all that kind of stuff all the time, right? So for a planner, this is what we consider our toolbox, right? And we come up with things to put in our toolbox. But from the perspective of the enforcement side, from the police department and from the judicial side to say, how do we make this more effective to enforce it and to create a significant consequence that makes compliance the desired outcome, right? Like, I think that we should have that conversation with our legal team, with our police officers, stuff like that, to say, okay, we're working on this side
Right.
of it, but as we're working on this, what tools do you guys need in your toolbox that are going to make this effective?
Well, when the city attorney saying, well, if a neighbor's not gonna step forward and sign a complaint or show up in court, we can't do that.
So is there a way that we can circumvent that?
Right, and so at that point, you're saying, well, why waste our breath?
I can just put in here.
Let's go back to wild, wild
MC
west,
Robert
everybody throws
paid
up.
fine.
So I definitely think enforcement probably needs to be a topic, but probably one we can't really answer tonight, so.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but coming back to the ordinance, is there any additional comments on the ordinance, additions, deletions? I mean, I feel like we're heading in the right direction.
I do.
Did
I don't really-
did we answer the question about the animals?
I think so, and it looks to me like that really has a lot more to do with the animal code than it does with this.
Yeah. So, any other further discussion or direction from staff on this one? I think it looks really good compared to what I think it's given us a lot of extra clarity so that people, when they do come in and ask, hey, I want to put this in, you can say, oh, hey, or if they go put it in without asking, you can go say, hey, look, here's the ordinance. You're
Yeah.
actually,
Realistically, in most neighborhoods, a Connex storage box dropped in the backyard for storage is not the most attractive thing, I mean, if you have a deep lot, if you're in a certain size zone and there's a place, but most of the new developments and stuff, everybody's pile. I live in the old part of the city here where, my neighbor out my backyard, the next house is on the other street there. So it's not such a big issue there, but somehow my neighbor next door, he's got things piled and stacked and,
maybe it'd be nice if it was in a storage container.
storage container or on the.
I'd rather if you had all stuff in there, but.
So you as planning commission members can make that suggestion to city council too. Perhaps we need to have a part-time or full-time code enforcement officer. And then we can enforce the laws we got on the books. I think that violations, if they are enforced properly, are adequate. Because they typically say it's a class B misdemeanor for every day that it's out of compliance, which will add up a lot.
That's what South Salt Lake calls theirs as a class B.
Yeah, so I read that
enforcement,
and it's, Payson City's code every day that it's not activism. of
Yeah,
violation.
anytime the code enforcement goes out and then the fine is levied.
There's all our future city council people with problems because a code enforcement officer.
You know, but you don't really start reading all the code in there. It'd take an army of them just to, I mean, I was reading just on landscaping, you know, just to see what was in that thing right there. It basically said, you know, you're to keep the yard basically in condition, grass, watered, alive, you know, the sidewalks and the gutters cleaned out, you know.
But a lot of enforcement can be done with the eye check, right? You drive by, you see something, it doesn't look right, and then you can reference the code later if you're that code enforcement officer and come back and say, this is out of compliance. And just driving around town, you can get a feel.
And that's kind of the barometer of a neighborhood, right? Like to see, I mean, because I can drive around every city block and point out code violations, right? But it's the barometer of the neighborhood to say, how egregious are these, right? Because if nobody's complaining about that, then everybody has, you know, kind of accepted that or whatever. And so then it comes into, and this is, you know, a lot where the city council comes into play. I'm saying, is this egregious enough that we want people looking for it, citing it, or are we okay with just if it becomes bad enough, somebody's gonna say something.
But you know, most code violations would be even if you got a code officer and there was a code violation, they actually wrote a warning ticket and taped it to the front door, you know, nobody's home, and basically said, this is just a notification that you are in violation of this code because of this. We will
You have 30 days.
Yeah, we'll check back in 30 days to make sure. And like I said, 90% of that's gonna go take care of itself.
Yeah.
What's that follow-up?
Yeah.
So I think that's good. Thank you, guys. It's kind of the fun part. Okay,
That would be the
Yes.
some of you might recognize this document, some of you might not. But this is our general plan. This is a portion of it. I just wanted to have a discussion with all of you tonight. Kind of about this. This is the future land use map for Payson City. The red line shows what we anticipate will be the complete annexation boundary of the city of Lewiston one day. Probably this line goes out approximately 20 to 30 years. Okay. Just to give you a little bit of reference, this black line represents the boundary of Payson City as it was in 2020. Okay, there have been some annexations that have occurred. It's stretched out a little bit down here, and a little bit up here, and we're considering some additional spaces in other parts of the city. But that gives you a little bit of reference for this map. The colors represent different types of land uses. This is not a zoning map. This is a land use type map. And what I wanted to draw your attention to was some of these colors down here. The salmon color is commercial. This pink color is office flex. Purple is industrial, and you can see kind of where that is associated. Obviously, our best network is the office flex area. We have a little bit of that again in some other spots, commercial, and then purple we call industrial. And tonight I wanted to get your thoughts and direction on what that means. And I'm glad that Jill just joined us. Because in addition to the map, we also have a little bit of text that kind of further explains what each of these land use development types mean. Mixed use center, commercial, office flex, sorry. Should have just downloaded this one. Office flex, this is kind of the definition of what that would be. And then we have industrial. A mix of industrial and office buildings typically situated near highways. Requires a high degree of access, typically 1 to 2-story buildings with large paved areas to support operational needs. Quick question. When I say industrial, is that the definition that you come up with?
I think
Okay.
more,
Commissioner Marzan,
I think more of like a manufacturing
okay,
facility, like steel fabrication or something like.
Geneva Steel memories
Yeah.
come to mind.
Yeah,
Okay,
the cement, yeah.
the cement plant, okay.
So heavy polluting.
So
type.
heavy industrial uses, if I say industrial uses, there's a certain connotation that comes to your mind.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Commissioner Warner,
I just remember we talked in the past about light industrial and the heavy industrial, and we tried to delineate the differences between those two. Light industrial could be a warehouse function, something that was pretty well contained within the building itself, where heavy industrial, you often thought about it getting outside the building on the grounds and doing things as the cement plant does, for example.
okay,
In that kind of.
so there's kind of a line that demarks where one is and one's a bit more, to use the same term again, egregious or noxious, those types of things. Commissioner Henry, what are your thoughts?
I'm kind of
Just industrial.
Yeah, I'm just looking more at where it says that it requires a high degree of access. So I just imagine something that's, yeah, just straight off the freeway and it's going to create a lot of traffic in and out that is going to have to be combined with residential traffic going to other parts of Payson. So, you know.
So I think that's a good point as well. Like, it requires a high degree of access can mean a couple different things as well, right? The number, the quantity, and the intensity, right? So when I think of more heavy industrial uses, I think of trucks bringing in shipping containers of stuff, or heavier materials and heavier uses at a more frequent rate than what you would normally experience as like Walmart or something like that, right? Like there's a reason why we associate that. Any other thoughts before I kind of move on to my next question? So as you think about the word industrial, and then you look at
I link that with, like I said, more manufacturing.
okay, the manufacturing part of it. Do you link it with Commissioner Warner? You brought up a good point of like outside versus inside. Just thinking about it, what do you normally think? I mean, does that trigger something in your mind? If I say industrial, are you thinking like there's tons of stuff all over the entire site?
It's like Geneva Road and Pleasant Grove.
That's what comes to your mind.
That's what comes to my mind for industrial.
Okay. So Geneva Road, north side of the freeway.
Yeah.
As you're headed into Pleasant Grove, where there are remnants of the ancillary uses from Geneva Steel, right? Like there's some railroad tracks. Actually, there are a lot of railroad tracks. And there are just some big buildings. Rust generally comes to my mind. Pollution. Tetanus shot is required.
Although to Commissioner Warner's point though, we have fruit growers It's light industrial, but it's all contained. We have out towards the dump,
In
lab.
Mountain Nutrition.
Yes. That's industrial, but it's all contained. It's not,
So do you consider that light or heavy?
I would say light.
You say you consider that light industrial.
You still would need like the big trucks to bring the materials because
So
to make lotion, you need.
you still need those materials, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that brings up a little bit of a dilemma that we as planning staff run into once in a while. Because the future land use map is designed to help guide development. And so when folks come in and talk to us about what future land uses are available within the city or through the annexation process, possibly, we've identified certain spaces to have different types of uses. This is my concern with the purple part. Is if I put up that map and I say, this is what we've identified for industrial. That means something different to every single person in this room and everybody that comes in to talk to us, right? So, and if you look at the location of that purple area, some of it is in a more densely populated part of our city. Some of it is a little farther out. This is Utah Avenue, right along here going out second south. This is 5600 West here.
Where's I-15?
I-15 is this gray
Okay.
line right
So-
through here.
This the area that they're trying to annex. That's not when people are not happy about it. Is that what we're kind of
That,
alluding to?
a little bit. So that is this part right here.
And we have a lot of storage units and stuff in that area, which I think storage units are probably in light industrial acceptable.
It's probably an acceptable use. My question, and what I think I would really like from the planning commission, from the city council, is a little bit further understanding of what you want to see in industrial area. And so a couple of questions. Are you okay with seeing further heavy industrial uses within Payson City?
Yes.
Yes, in the right spot, but I think, and maybe this is what you're alluding to, is somebody comes in and says, that's all industrial, I should be able to use heavy industrial in any of that purple. And
You
so,
understand our dilemma?
so I think we need to add another color, that I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is we need to very well identify where we want a heavy industrial use versus industrial, that if you use just the term, you could, yeah.
So can heavy industrial be like gray, dark gray?
So how do you differentiate between the fact, because is a light industrial contained indoors and more of a.
I would think that type of definition would actually work well.
And heavy industrial,
But what would
links
you,
to the outdoors.
what would
you
you
know?
call the new batch, concrete batch that is gonna be contained? To me, that's still heavy.
That's not gonna be contained because, they've still got heavy trucks hauling in and out.
But
aggregate
By what you
material.
said. previously,
The
I
hopper and
think
everything's all in a building.
Basically, the batch plant itself is gonna be contained in a building. Okay, the trucks are still gotta pull into the building. They'll batch load the trucks are gonna come out, so. That's why I said that the difference between fully contained inside now, a warehouse. You know, you've got loading docks and stuff, and so most of them, you don't see anything outside but a truck backing into a loading dock, and you got forklifts loading and unloading out, so I mean. What's the difference between that concrete? None really, big different trucks.
So let me go off of this discussion a little bit, because I think this is really important, and this is a lot of where our dilemma lies from, in that. If the use, quote unquote, is contained within a building. Is that a prime factor of whether it's light or heavy industrial?
Let me just color that.
Mhm.
One of the things that past planning commissions have talked about is trying to boost the image of an industrial park, business park as we have out there. And I think the word park is important. It's, those businesses are set up in a landscape and environment where it doesn't feel dirty and heavy and polluting and this kind of thing. It feels like I'm in a pretty good place, in terms, there's nothing harsh about the environment. And so I think that's one of the things. And, not disparaging the facility there on North Main Street, but that is a heavy industrial use, and it's different than what we're seeing in the business park. Below, there's not much more they can do than they have done to screen that off and to mitigate some of that impact on the neighborhood. But I think that's the kind of thing we would probably in an ideal world like to be able to achieve, is more park and less heavy industrial.
That's good. And again, I'm not opposed to extra heavy industrial, we just make sure it's in the right location.
Okay, so you just threw me a low lob. What's the right location?
Next to the concrete batch plant, just kind of around the sewer plant.
Okay,
So
here's the dilemma.
You coming in. now.
Yeah.
And the veterans one.
Here's the dilemma. So this
anyway, they
is,
can't hear what's going on next door.
so this right here is, this is North Main Street.
Yeah.
Right. This is the sewer treatment plant and the power plant. This is UVU.
Yeah.
This is the station area. This is the WICP Payson warehouse.
Oh, yeah,
Buildings.
that big 4 lots he's got in there.
So these are obviously some heavy industrial. I mean, a sewer treatment plant and a power plant is like the Webster definition of heavy industrial use.
Yeah.
Right. Separating these uses is going to be Bamberger Road. So the right place becomes really, really important. And as we think about that, the right place becomes important.
I have never felt like, just from my perspective, never felt like we had many acres in the proposed Payson City that would ever be heavy industrial. What's going on North Main is about the limit of what I would see. Now, I know down there where Utah Avenue becomes second south, that there's a facility there that I understand is actually in the county at this point. That's another heavy industrial use.
So if you look at this, this black line right there, north of it is actually in the county.
Yeah. Yeah, so, but that's really not a great place for heavy industrial use either, because we're thinking that neighborhood eventually is going to be either a commercial center or a residential area. So my feeling at this point is that unless we do something next to the garbage dump, which I still don't think is a good idea, we probably don't have very many acres to offer in heavy industrial.
Or heavy industrial. Who would agree with that statement?
I agree. I don't think we have time, but what about the purple right there at the top of the map on the other side of that's out there on the border of nowhere anyway?
This is technically, Jill, isn't this the Benjamin Cemetery?
Well, cemetery is a little bit further south,
A little bit,
but yes,
okay.
but that's 8,000.
Border, so then they have in south.
That's your freeway interchange.
That's a freeway
And
interchange.
that's potentially another industrial or commercial.
Area.
So I think that question of location becomes critical, right? Because we have folks that come in and say, I want to do some sort of fabrication and stuff like that. And so our obvious questions start to say, okay, what do you need as far as a building? Is this contained within a building? Are you doing outside storage? How many forklifts and loaders are going in and out? And I mean, there's a lot of intensity that can go into it. But our general plan just doesn't give us that type of direction right now. And so I would really love to kind of further have this discussion about, do we have space for more industrial use? And if the answer is yes, then what type, where, and to what extent? Or should some of this purple area actually be pink for that office flex? Is that what we intended for that area? And so questions to think about is, how much access do they have? What type of road are they going on? How much interaction with other uses is going to be in that area, right? So
Can you send us this map?
What line is
I
the
can
general
send you
plan
this
right there?
So it's already in the plan?
Yeah, that's the general plan, page
adopted.
63.
Okay, it's because, I mean, this would be something, yeah, that we could kind of take as a homework assignment and just kind of take a look at it, but,
So I can send you this link. It's on our website. So the general plan is here, and we've actually even pulled it out right here on our page. So the future land use map is its own page, and you can view that. But I would love for you guys to take this on as a homework assignment to think about that and to say, okay, and answer some of those questions. Are we willing to support additional heavy industrial uses? Are we ready to support additional light industrial uses? What to you makes kind of that line in the sand of what's the difference? And then where?
Is there a tax benefit, like, does Payson City get more taxes from heavy industrial versus light industrial versus flex office versus?
So we get taxes from property tax, which is based on valuation, right? And then from sales tax. So the reality is that some industrial uses are point of sale, and some of them are point of sale elsewhere. If it's point of sale elsewhere, we do not get those taxes.
Or if they're business to business, then it's.
Right.
Yeah.
Then we're not getting that. And so those are things to really consider. The other thing to really consider is the resource consumption and load that is required by some of these uses. A few months ago, we got a question that sometimes we get things from EDC Utah, just requests for information. It's kind of like a clearinghouse where they can go in, a business can go to EDC Utah and say, hey, this is my business, can you send it out and see who could accommodate us? I think this use needed like 65 million gallons of water.
That one's the next.
So obviously like a bottling company,
yeah,
right? That's a huge amount of resource.
Yeah.
And we would have to do some significant upgrades in order to accommodate a resource like that. Our general response was, we really don't want a business that is going to be so heavily dependent on a finite resource that we're already, concerned about. And I say that not to alarm you. Like, Payson is really in a good position as far as water resource goes, but that would have a significant impact on our ability to service other future development and growth, right? So those are things that come into play.
so we sent them to Colorado.
Oh, right.
Let's go to Colorado.
Go to Nevada.
And Robert, I think that's
Yeah.
what maybe Commissioner Warner was mentioning before with previous commissions, because going through the standard land uses. I mean, that was a big responsibility of the planning commission years ago. One, identify the types of businesses in the city. Where would we want them to be? Intensity and, light industrial, heavy industrial. But we don't have to allow every use in our city. We're going to determine that there's some that are either too impactful on our city resources, or they take up too much land, or they're not bringing enough, tax revenue in order for it to be beneficial to the city. So I think that's, like you said, that's all part of the equation. So I think sometimes when we hear that, well, you're not allowing that use, or the city didn't allow a business to come in, or all of those things are taken into consideration, because at the end of the day, we're providing power, the water, the sewer, the roads, the maintenance, everything for that. And we want to make sure that there's benefit to us, either through taxes or jobs or whatever it may be. So.
And that's such a good point, Jill. And that was the other thing that I wanted to mention, Kathy, was the other way that we derive income is providing housing for people that live in our city and spend money in our city. At least hopefully they do.
We want an Amazon warehouse.
We
want Amazon an Amazon point of sale, we could get some of that. So now, if you're shopping online,
using business things, but we have some industrial businesses that have a showroom that actually sell product. Or receiving property tax, and we're receiving sales tax for that. Whereas others are just gonna have a big warehouse, but your benefit might be jobs. Like Robert said, it might just having people close to home, or shopping in our community, or spending money in our community during the lunch hour or whatever it may be. So it's not all about the sales tax on that site either. It might just be money that's being spent in our city within a certain time frame of the day.
But that's where I think the business part makes sense, to have a retail outlet attached to, they're obviously selling still everywhere else, but they do have a retail outlet there, or Cornabees, or whoever. They do have a small retail presence as well. The business part makes sense for that type of operations. You're just not walking to the ghettos to get stuff. You're actually walking to somewhere that someone is hiding, and so.
Like Robert had said, what Robert had said is some businesses just have an inordinate amount of impact on our services. That maybe we just determined that, yes, we have those uses in the city now, but we're not going to have a third or fourth or fifth. We just determined that those types of uses, while we have those businesses in our community, we're going to support those businesses, but it's just too much impact on our services, and we just don't allow those uses.
So, homework assignment. Have a look at this map, and just look at the purple part. So don't worry about anything else. Just look at the purple part.
Can you just print this page from?
Of course.
I think the biggest thing is coming to the definition for what that purple part should be is the important part.
Because
I don't necessarily see a problem with the purple being there. It's just we need to make sure it's well defined.
what does it mean?
Right.
And how do we give direction? How do we give good direction? Because this is what we have to go on right now.
Yeah, you change that to light industrial, whatever, and say things such as warehousing, blah blah blah. That can be. I do like it. It has to be enclosed type thing. I think it keeps it cleaner.
Well, if you look just on the other side of the freeway off of Utah Ave, you got the cow ranch is set up in that building right there. And they're basically a storage warehouse. They ship in, ship out. But in the same building that houses the other half, GSI, and they're a manufacturing facility that does cabinets for stores, fixtures, all that stuff. And so they employ 75, 80 people on that side. The warehouse just has a handful of people that are in the office. And
Well,
work
this-
with,
the
Yeah, Liberty Safe out there. That's all manufactured.
But they're all right.
enclosed,
All
so-
right there.
Yeah.
By you would never know.
Yeah.
And these guys have more cars parked outside and on the other side. To the amount.
But the impact on the area is not bad at all because,
It's enclosed.
yeah, and like you said, they back up to the docks and they're not storing stuff outside. So that would definitely be more what I envisioned the purple areas being in basically the same type of industrial, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna say something, I'm like, no, he's gonna adjust and just have.
Well, the other issue is if you look down where Geneva Rocks facility.
And he's been 6 cops.
Sewer
Every-
line.
every-
Every facility has the big high concrete rock
100
looking
pages
walls,
later.
both sides, and then it's sprinkled, then you drive down Utah Avenue out through the.
You just wanted all the new commissioners to get familiar with the general plan, and you were like, I wanna make sure you have.
You don't need it to.
We spent a lot of time.
Well, I
on that
think
general plan.
I think that's the next
Page
step.
63.
You know, I like where Robert's going, you know, I picture here, the next step is exactly what you're saying, Kit, because then there's the ordinance requirements. It's like maybe there's certain uses that you allow, but you want it to have.
Right now.
There you get one page.
Because there's more attractive.
Before they collaborate.
That was how eating grass.
Robert can autograph.
We have to collaborate now. You have this page. You have this.
Yeah,
page.
you look at this one.
You get a negative 1, bring it in, give us a report next time.
Projects. PTSD project.
I was gonna say, Blair and Kathy and myself all sat through the general plan last night.
This is just.
Yeah.
Right.
I read the entire thing. Yep, I read it all. At
To
least twice, because the draft and then the final for.
It's funny part, but point around, you got all the people screaming.
Did we want, Brandon, I don't know if he had any comments, I don't know if you want to give him the opportunity to comment where he's.
Brandon Daly, did you have any comments?
Mute him and give him a chance to.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I've been listening with your,
Sounds like-
I'd be happy to do a code enforcement presentation next time, so you guys can be thinking about it, what you want to do to add.
Yeah, we're all like, who's BD? And now we know.
Yes, come do a code enforcement and then yes,
Thanks,
I want to
Brandon.
know the fees and how $5 for each enforcement gets sent to the holiday fund for the planning commission.
Okay, so I thought we had public involvement, but no, I got excited and found out that that was not the case.
Thanks for joining us, Brandon.
And Robert, you may have mentioned this before I came in, but I think just with the general plan, it's so important that we review it continually and on a regular basis, because just going back to some of the comments that were made, I think we identified certain area, I mean, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20, whatever it was, we had determined that where would we put heavy industrial uses? Well, it makes sense next to a power plant and next to a sewer plant, all that, as it was mentioned. But fast forward all these years,
Yeah.
now there's some other external forces that have come in that have actually changed what our development patterns going to be in that area with, you all mentioned it, with the interchange with UVU and the station area. And so we have to adjust. We have to adjust based on that, and, so I think that's sort of, I mean, this is that conversation, that's the dilemma that Robert was mentioning is, and I think up until those more recent decisions, we'd all agreed that that was probably a good location for those uses. But now with these other improvements coming in, do we need to relocate them, or are they even needed in the community? Has our community evolved enough that
I would say probably yes.
maybe we don't have those heavy industrial uses?
Yes.
Or are they in a
And it starts with you guys, and so that's why we appreciate you taking a little bit of time and doing this, and so that's all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, the
Motion, second, with Commissioner Marzan, all in favor, but yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks you guys so much.
Really what planning commission should be for up is this type of thing, because they're taking away subdivisions and things like that that are all